recently Kawasaki announced that they're not going to make the KLR650 anymore. So let's look back at the KLR650 history and try to understand why this motorcycle lasted so long in the Kawasaki motorcycle lineup. And let's figure out why Kawasaki pulled the plug on this very successful motorcycle. Kawasaki was founded in 1878 by Shozo Kawasaki. Kawasaki was a tradesman in Nagasaki. Today we know Kawasaki as a motorcycle manufacturer, one of the big four Japanese manufacturers. But their motorcycle division is just a small part of the Kawasaki heavy industries. This Japanese company builds planes, trains, tankers, industrial robots, and spacecraft. Kawasaki started making motorcycles after it acquired the Meguro. What I'm trying to tell you is that Kawasaki builds big stuff. To understand the KLR650, we must look back at the KLR600. The KLR600 was manufactured between 1984 and 1985. The 600 was a liquid-cooled, carbureted, single-cylinder bike. At the time, the KLR600 had two large competitors. One was the Honda XL600R and the Yamaha XT600. The KLR600 had something that the other ones did not have. It was liquid-cooled. The KLR600 was released when air-cooled motorcycles reigned supreme. It was an interesting move by Kawasaki. The KLR600 looked like a dirt bike, but it really was a road bike. The other competitors were a little bit more dirt-oriented. Kawasaki introduces the KLR650 in 1987 with a retail price of only $2,999. The Kawasaki KLR650, a motorcycle that rules towns, twisties, and trails alike with a record-setting 651cc of liquid-cooled 4-stroke power. That makes it the strongest thumper in its class with a lot more power and torque than the other 600cc crowd. But that wasn't really true. The KLR650 was a little underpowered. The KLR650 had a very nice modification for touring riders. It had a 6.1 gallon gas tank. This lets riders go about 350 miles between stops. That was excellent for touring and commuting, but not so good for off-road riding when you carried so much weight in gas. The KLR650 was not perfect. It had a few problems. Off-roaders often criticize the KLR650 by not having enough power. Also, the suspension was very soft. The front brakes were also very sloppy and mushy, and whenever you hit the front brake, it would just dive under pressure. But this was to be expected in a budget dual sport bike. The KLR650 was one of the best budget dual sport bikes you could have. So it was pretty common to have some issues, and there was a lot of aftermarket support for this bike to modify it and upgrade it. Also keep in mind that the 2008s and below KLR650s had a few more problems because they were less sophisticated than the newer 2008s and above. But both are great bikes. It also suffered from lean jetting out of the factory. The KLR650 also had a problem with this thing called the Doohickey, which is basically the stock idle lever. The idle lever needed to keep tension on the balancer chain. Failure on this part can destroy the engine. This part, available just about anywhere that sells KLR650 parts, was about $41, but it included a lot of labor to install. Surprisingly, in the later years, Kawasaki made this a little bit stronger, but not as strong as the aftermarket part. So a lot of people do the Doohickey install. This shows you that Kawasaki wasn't really interested in upgrading the KLR650. They only made small refinements to a motorcycle that was already generally good. The KLR650 was decent off-road, but was mostly an on-road bike. Its soft suspension really didn't help. It had rubber footpegs that made it very slippery to ride off-road. This goes back to the beginning. The KLR650 was a budget bike, a budget dual sport bike that was very good at doing a lot of things, which was its strength and weakness. It didn't do anything particularly well, but it did everything. You couldn't say that about a lot of motorcycles. The KLR was also so cheap that a lot of riders didn't mind dropping it a few times. As a matter of fact, dropping it a few times added to the character of the KLR650. If your intention of riding off-road is wide open trails, then the KLR650 might be a good bike for you. But if you intend on doing single track or very fast riding off-road in deep sand, the KLR650 is just not that good of a fire roads, gravel roads. The KLR650 is perfect for those. Most motorcycles are a compromise, and the KLR650 was always a compromise. But the KLR650 hit a perfect medium of motorcycle riding. It wasn't good at anything. It was right down the middle. There's always going to be guys that if you tell them that the KLR650 is not a good off-road bike, they can always point to people who are riding gnarly off-road trails on it. But that is more dependent on skill rather than the motorcycle. Any off-road rider would be much better off in a 450 trail bike than a KLR650 on a very tight trail. But I'd hate to take that 450 cross-country on the road to get to a trail. And that's where the KLR650 comes in handy. The KLR650 was a very easy bike to ride. Beginners could easily get on this bike and ride it very efficiently without any problems. Its low price help riders take it on adventures without being worried about it getting stolen or vandalized. The KLR650 Tengai was a little bit of a different bike than the regular KLR650. This one sported Paris-Dakar styling. It was sold starting in 1990 and it only went for about 2 more years. Tengai in Japanese means the end of the sky. BikeCouriers.com said about the Tengai, the difference between the KLR650 and the Tengai was a dual piston front caliper on the Tengai versus a single on the KLR650. Shorter but thicker forks and a much nicer instrument panel that was attached to the frame and not on the triple tray. Kawasaki also made the KLX650. This was a better dirt bike than the KLR650. It was lighter weight, it had different forks, it had a smaller gas tank, and it was slightly more lightweight. But it was not as good on the highway and on the road than the KLR650 was. There was even a diesel KLR650 that was employed by the US Marines. Hayes Diversified Research and F1 Engineering of Esperia, California converted a bunch of KLR650 engines to diesel. These diesel engines were extremely slow and it took about like 3 seconds for the bike to start moving, according to the New York Times. One of the great advantages of the M103M1's diesel engine is its efficiency. At a steady 55 miles an hour, it gets about 96 miles to the gallon, according to Hayes, about twice the mileage of the gasoline engine. Wattman.com provides a valuable production timeline of the KLR650. As you can see in the production timeline of the KLR650, you can see in 1987 with the KLR600, it sold about 9,000 units, but it quickly dropped after that, hitting a low in 1990. The adventure market started picking up around 1995 with releases of the BMW R1100 GS. There started to be a demand for adventure bikes. At this point in time, these bikes were not known as adventure bikes. They were enduros, dual sports, big trailies. The adventure market started in the 2000s. Production for the KLR650 increased from 1997 all the way to 2008. In 2008, that was a new significant improvement in the KLR650, including aesthetics. It was cheap, people could ride this all over the world, and it gave you a great bang for the buck. So why did Kawasaki stop making it? Well, it's simple. The sales numbers were down. The adventure market started to be a little bit different than it was in 1987 when they released the KLR650. There's many more choices to choose when you're buying an adventure bike. BMW's got a boatload of their GS bikes. Honda's got the Africa Twin, the CB500X. Yamaha's got the Tenere. KTM's got the Adventure. In short, there's a lot more competitors in this market now. And probably as good as the KLR650, it just cannot compete with the new adventure machines that are coming out. That's suitable for the contemporary adventure market. We believe that Kawasaki is going to bring a new bike to the adventure market. It's probably going to be with a new platform, such as the Versys. The trend is to make it a bigger engine with more cylinders. And the Versys platform might be it. What would you like to see in a new Kawasaki adventure bike? Write a comment below and let me know.
Hey, I'm Anthony, the Vehicle Hunter. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page and please like us on Facebook. Vehicle Hunter.